Hello everyone, my name is Hirpo Gudeta. I'm Ph.D. student at Africa Center of Excellency for Water Management at Addis Ababa University under the supervision of Professor Tena Alamayena and Dr. Tena Alamaro. And this study was sponsored by Awash River Basin Development Office, Minister of Water Resource. And today I'm going to present you our research findings on performance assessment of interpolation techniques for optimal area rainfall temperature estimation. The case of two contrasting river catchments, Akaki and Mile, Ethiopia. Just as introduction, optimum spatial predictions of climate variables are very essential as a principal input for downstream applications like hydrological modeling or hydraulic modeling or water-related infrastructure design and construction, specifically in topographic complex catchments. However, in developing countries, gauge stations are irregular and highly sparse, and particularly in the lowlands nations, and Ethiopia is not an exception. So, in such condition or in such situation, someone can use remote sensing based satellite data, climate data, or reanalysis climate data sets, or blended or merged grid climate data sets as an option. As background, it's very difficult, it's very tedious to have a sample point data sets for a certain variable which covers the whole spatial scale. For instance, catchment scale, or basin scale, or regional scale, or even national scale. It is very tedious to have a point sample data sets for a certain variable which covers the whole spatial scale. So in this case, what we can do, if you have some sampled known data for a certain variable, we can predict the spatial pattern of that variable just by using interpolation technique. So we can classify interpolation techniques into two, deterministic and geostatistical interpolation techniques. So different scholars investigated the effect of catchments landscape on spatial pattern of climate variables using different interpolation techniques. For instance, in 2081, this scholar researcher investigated the impact of elevation on the prediction of the spatial pattern of climate variables through simple linear regression. And as a result, he concludes that the elevation highly affects the spatial pattern of rainfall and the temperature. This guy in 2017 compared several spatial interpolation techniques to map the mean precipitation, and the result indicated that the creaking with external drift seems to outperform regression methods. From our literature review, we conclude that there was no globally or universally suitable interpolation technique. As a knowledge gap, we found that none of them considered the effect of the combination of elevation and easting or northing as a covariate on the spatial prediction of climate variables. As a result, this research aimed to assess the performance of various interpolation techniques to select and use the suitable technique for spatial pattern prediction based on statistical and graphical evaluation methods. Methodology. Our studies areas were found in one of our river basin, which we call it Awash River Basin. Of course, Awash River Basin is the seventh river basin in Ethiopia in terms of water source potential, and it's the fourth river basin in terms of area coverage. These two catchments are contrasting, of course, contrasting in terms of the climate condition they have, say, process, and the catchment's landscape. Agri catchment is a source of both surface and the ground water supply for capital city of the nation, which is Addis Ababa and its surrounding. Here we collected two climatological data sets, ground-based point climatic data set and the blended grid climate data sets. Blended grid climate data sets were developed by this team in 2017 for some African countries, including Ethiopia, at national level. They prepared blended grid climate data set at national level for African nations, including Ethiopia. Here, what we did, we only collected the pixel value of the grid in which our gauge stations laid within those grids. So we have 9 gauge stations in Mille, we have 10 gauge stations Akaki. So now we only collected the pixel value of the grid in which our gauge stations laid within those grids. After that, we performed or developed a correlation and regression between the pixel value of the grid and the gauge-based point climate data to check the similarity between the pixel value of the grid and the gauge-based point data. As a result, pixel value of the grids are highly correlated with gauge-based point data sets. However, gauge-based point data sets are a full missing for some consecutive days, months, even years. So instead of using ground-based point data, we prefer to use pixel value of the grids as a point data set for further application. In addition to climatic data set, we also used a digital elevation model, longitudinal and latitudinal positions in raster format for external drift or external factor. And the tools used here are programming with RStudio and the GStat package and the GIS tools. Okay. This is a flowchart that we conceptual framework that we used in our methods. As you see, there is spatial interpolation techniques classified into geostatistical and deterministic, as I've mentioned in previous slide. We took only from geostatistical interpolation technique, ordinary creaking, and creaking with external drift. From deterministic, we only use inverse distance weight. And then, based on these interpolation techniques, using this monthly and annual climate data set and those rasters as external factor or external drift, we developed experimental variogram computation. And then after we developed experimental variogram computation, then we fitted theoretical variogram with experimental variogram. After we fitted theoretical with experimental variogram, just using cross-validation test. In our case, leave one out cross-validation test. We developed creaking. We performed creaking interpolation. Then, just using this statistical and visual inspection, we select optimum interpolation technique. These are the steps that we follow. As a result, we developed variogram models and parameters for our climate datasets. Here, for Akai catchment, for example, we developed parameters and the variogram model for mean monthly and annual rainfall. And here we developed parameters and models for maximum temperature using covariates or external factors. Here, because the combination of elevation, northing, elevation, and the northing, here is elevation as an external factor or as external drift. After we develop theoretical variogram model and the parameters, then we fitted theoretical variogram with external experimental variogram or empirical variogram. Here, for example, for Akai catchment, we developed, we fitted theoretical variogram with experimental variogram for January, mean monthly and annual rainfall, and January mean monthly maximum temperature and maximum annual temperature using a spherical model as well as a steam model. After we fitted theoretical with experimental variogram, then we developed a map which shows a spatial pattern of climatic variables. And for example, here for Mille catchment, we developed a map which shows a spatial pattern of August rainfall using different interpolation techniques. For instance, here, ordinary creaking, and then this is inverse distance weight. Here is creaking with external drift using elevation as external drift. This one is creaking with external drift using easting as external drift. This one, creaking with external drift using northing as external drift. This one, creaking with external drift using the combination of an elevation and easting as ecovariate or external drift. The same here, we developed a map which shows a maximum temperature for Akai catchment using the various interpolation techniques. After we develop a spatial pattern of climatic variables, then we verify the performance of interpolation methods just using the statistical methods that we mentioned in previous slide. So based on that, for Mille catchment, the creaking with external drift using the combination of longitude and elevation gives overall the most optimum spatial estimation results with the smallest statistical evaluation parameter. Whereas for Akai catchment, creaking with external drift with northing as ecovariate was selected as a suitable method for monthly interpolating rainfall dataset. Whereas creaking with external drift with elevation as ecovariate was proven to be the best interpolation technique selected for interpolating annual mean rainfall. As conclusions, catchments, landscape descriptors such as elevation, easting, northing, and their combination highly improves the spatial prediction of climatic variables, particularly in complex topographic regions. The improved novelty of this research resides in the covariance selection used in creaking with external drift, and based on the proposed method, the selected predictors were improved the predictive performance of creaking with external drift. Therefore, it is clear that the incorporation of secondary information, like in our case study, where climatic stations are poor in terms of coverage and quality, and the catchments with complex topography can significantly minimize both the rainfall and temperature spatial interpolation errors. For more details on model setup and comparison analysis, our article available on this peer-reviewed journals, which you call Journal of Water and Climate Change. So you can download and read the detail of our research findings on this journal. For further or for additional contact, you can use this email. Thank you very much for your attention. Really, thank you.